StudyIQ IAS English channel. My name is Shubham Sagar and today we have to talk about Bhakti movement, one of the most important topics associated with UPSC Prelims 2025. Just like we talk about, there are different areas, Buddhism, Jainism, UPSC asks certain questions from Buddhism and Jainism almost every year. Similarly, Bhakti is also that particular topic, Bhakti movement as well as Sufi movement. So today we have to talk about Bhakti movement and there will be three sources from which we will be studying Bhakti movement. The first source, as you can see here, if you cannot see, I will make you or I will ensure that you can see it. So this is class 7 chapter 6 NCERT. This is your first source, or this will be your first source. This will give you some amount of conceptual clarity. Class 7 rather, chapter 6. The second chapter which you can see here is class 12 chapter 6. So class 7 chapter 6, class 12 chapter 6, both of NCERTs, they deal with Bhakti movement and Sufi movement. Today we have to talk about Bhakti movement. Once we are done with these two chapters, you will see there are certain, terms, there are certain themes, there are certain personalities whom both these chapters will talk about. Let's say Sankaracharya. So that means that particular personality is very important. If they talk about Nirgun or Shagun Bhakti, those particular terms are important. If they talk about Nalayira Divya Prabandham, that is important. If they talk about Tivaram, that is important. So again, if we talk about 12 Alvars, 63 Nayanars, and here also a question comes from students, sir, which particular, good evening Bulbul, which particular Alvar and Nayanar we have to remember? Do we have to remember all 12 Alvars and 63 Nayanars? So here also you will understand, whichever Nayanars and Alvars, NCERT talks about a lot. Those Alvars and Nayanars are important from exam perspective. So NCERT will give you an idea once we are done with these two chapters of NCERT of two different classes, class 7 and class 12, we will go to PPT. Fine. So here the talks are going on related to Bhakti movement. The concept of Bhakti is very old as Mahabharata. In Mahabharata you have Bhagavad Gita. There is a concept of Bhagavatism. If you can see it here. And if you're not able to see the chapter, you can tell me. See, Bhagavad Gita. So in Bhagavad Gita, and this is class 7, chapter 6, in Bhagavad Gita, there is a concept of Bhagavatism. And what does that mean? In Bhagavatism, there is a concept called Bhaga. Whatever be the Bhaga of your God, that will become your Bhaga. In Hindi, we call it Bhagya. Bhagya means the faith. Whatever be the faith of your God, that will become rather your faith. That's what Bhagavad Gita says. Fine. What else, bro? What else is there in class 7, chapter 6? Pay attention to the lines or the bold or the underlined portion here. You don't have to do PhD, but we have to understand what are the important areas we have to focus on. So, 7 to 9th century, please understand one thing. Many people have so much confusion related to these 7th century, 9th century. What does 7th century means? So, when we talk about 7th century, that means 601, just give me a second, 601 to 700 AD. That is your 7th century. Similarly, if you are talking about, let's say, 9th century, that is 801 to 900 AD. That saw the emergence of Alvars and Nayanars. Now, I will tell you, we will talk about these Alvars and Nayanars a lot in these two chapters and the PPT. This is actually an important lecture, very important lecture, one of the most important lecture you will witness in this preparation, because most of the people have phobia about Bhakti movement and Sufi movement. So here there are terms, Alvars and Nayanars, So Alvars, Vishnu, Nayanar, Shiva. There are many people who keep on asking me this particular question, that sir, how we will remember these guys? How we will remember? Sometimes we get confused whether Alvars are associated with Vishnu or Shiva. So understand one thing, there are different ways of remembering these people, Alvars and Nayanars, or sometimes they were even, revered as God in different period, like in Chola kingdom. We'll talk about that few moments from now. So, Alvars and Nayanars, how will you remember who refers to Shiva and who, worships Vishnu? So, Nayanar, in Hindi there is a term called Nayan. Nayan means Chakshu, Nayan means eyes. So, Nayanar, if you see Shiva, if you have seen Shiva, you will realize that he has a third eye when he gets angry. So, that's how you can remember Nayanars refers to Shiva. And then the next one, Alvar will be referring, or we will be referring to Vishnu. That's good evening, Charita. So, Alvar and Nayanar, Nayan, eyes, third eye, who has third eye? That is Shiva. And that's how you will remember Nayanar, Shiva. And the next one is Alvar, that is Vishnu. Fine. What else class 7 chapter 6 is talking about? Pay attention to the underlined portion. So they can give you these numbers. These numbers are very famous. 12 Alvars, as you can see here, and 63 Nayanars. Now the next question which most of the students ask, do we have to remember all the Alvars and Nayanars? The answer is no. You have to remember those Alvars and Nayanars which has been mentioned in both these chapters, class 7 chapter 6 and class 12 chapter 6. If there are certain Nayanars or Alvars, both the chapters are talking about. Let's say in some chapters you are also seeing their images, or there are different they have different statues etc. made on certain Alvars and Nayanars, then they become more important. If you are seeing some prose etc., shloks etc. associated with Alvars and Nayanars, again important. So 63 Nayanars who worshipped Shiva. Here Appar, Samandar, Sundara and Manikava Sagar, who are important like out of these four. So all these four are important, NCERT talks about them. But out of these four, Appar is very important, because in Bharat Ek Khoj, there is even an episode on Appar, who was a Shaivite or who was a Shaiva saint, and who used to be during the period of Pallava king Mahendra Varman. So Appar is important. He is one of the first, one of the earliest proponent of Bhakti movement in South India. You can remember him that way. Manikava Sagar is very important. Why? Because when we will see even class 12 chapter 6, you will see there are certain quotes attributed to Manikava Sagar, and he has been mentioned multiple times. So you have to remember what you have to remember. The one thing which you have to remember is whether he was a Shaivite or Vaishnavite, whether he was an Alvar or Nayanar. That's it. You don't have to do PhD here, or you have to look at them too much. 12 Alvars and 63 Nayanars. And here there are different books which you have to remember. So when we talk about Alvars, we talk about people who worshipped Vishnu. They have a book which is known as Nalaira Divya Prabandham. Here you can see it is written Divya Prabandham. In some sources it is also written as Nalaira Divya Prabandham. This is Divya Prabandham. So Nalaira Divya Prabandham or Divya Prabandham is same. In some books they are also referred to as Tamil Veda. But this is not a fixed thing, because there are different books or text also which has been referred to as Tamil Veda, like Tirukullar. So don't get confused by that particular nomenclature, but do remember sometimes they can ask you which of the following text is referred to as Tamil Veda, and in that they will not give both Tirukullar and Nalaira Divya Prabandham, but if they are giving Nalaira Divya Prabandham, so that is the answer, Tamil Veda. So this is your Alvars text, very sacred text. Nayanar, you have to remember Tivaram. Tivaram is very important. Tiruvashakam, fine, but Tivaram you cannot forget. So Tivaram and Nalaira Divya Prabandham. Even if somebody asks you out of these Tivaram and Nalaira Divya Prabandham, which is more important, your answer will be Nalaira Divya Prabandham or Divya Prabandham. So these facts you have to keep it in mind, fine. What else is important from exam perspective in these chapters? So we have talked about Manikava Sagar, who is a Nayanar. See here, there is a bronze image also of Manikava Sagar, and that's how you you understand who are the personalities, which particular Alvar or Nayanar you have to remember in your exam. So this is Manikava Sagar image, fine. And then there is a composition etc. So you don't have to again read all these composition, but again they are talking about, you came as though it were again. Let's not read it, you can read it in your spare time, I will tell you the important points. So now philosophy and Bhakti, what were the different philosophies attributed to Bhakti movement? Here, if you again go back, and if you go back to the lecture 8, that was related to orthodox philosophy, there we have talked about Samkhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, and then Mimamsa, Purvimamsa and Uttarimamsa. Uttarimamsa is Vedanta school. So in those schools we have talked about, especially when we are talking about Vedanta school, there we have talked about Shankaracharya. He was one of the earliest proponent of Bhakti movement in South India, and he believed in the philosophy of Advaita. Here we have talked about, Atman and Brahman, our soul and universal soul. Atman, individual soul, universal soul, that is Brahman, and they are one and the same. That is what is Advaita philosophy talks about. So all these things are going on. Again, you can go back to orthodox philosophy also, and you can watch that particular lecture, what Advaita philosophy is. So again, if we reiterate Shankaracharya's philosophy, he says that Atman is part of the Brahman. That means in each of us living souls resides God, because we all are part of God, and that's why later on Vivekananda extended this particular principle. What he said, he was a believer of Advaita philosophy, Vivekananda said, Swami Vivekananda, and he used to believe that, or he used to say that if you want to worship Shiva, or service of Jiva is worship of Shiva. So please remember these things, we have already talked about them when we were talking about orthodox school. What is Jacobin Club? Jacobin Club has nothing to do with Bhakti movement A, that is associated with French Revolution. So yes, we'll talk about it when we are talking world history per se. So Ramanujacharya Vishishta Advaita, this also we have talked about it in 8th lecture, that was orthodox philosophy, that you have Atman, you have Brahman. Even when Atman will merge with Brahman, it will retain its individuality. That's what we have talked about in Vishishta Advaita philosophy, or qualified oneness or qualified monism. Fine. Basavanna's Virashaivism. Again, please understand one thing. There are two chapters which we are focusing on right now. Class 7 chapter 6 and class 12 chapter 6. These two chapters are very important when we are talking about Bhakti movement as well as Sufi movement. So in both these chapters, they have talked about Basavanna's Virashaivism. Plus Virashaivism, and they are also known as Lingayats. This is very important, Virashaiva and Lingayats, because they also remain in news in Karnataka region. There are talks about reservation of Virashaivites and Lingayats, how much reservation they should be getting in educational institution and government jobs. Good evening, Kritika. So that's why Basavanna's Virashaivism is very important from exam perspective, because it is there in both the chapters, class 7 chapter 6 as well as class 12 chapter 6. Fine. And here what happens, they are a part of Hinduism when we are talking about Virashaivas or Lingayats. But in Hinduism what happens, you are like, if I die, I'll be burned, cremated. But in this scenario, when we talk about Virashaivas or Lingayats, they don't burn the body, they bury the body, because they say that when we die, and when the body is buried, we are literally merging with the means Shiva. So they don't burn the body, they bury it. So remember these things. And they were against all the orthodoxy, against all forms of rituals and idol worshipping, and they were very radical for their time. So you have to remember Virashaivites, Basavanna, founder, and they are also known as Lingayats. They used to wear the lingas, and that is the point which you have to remember. So Akka Mahadevi, she is also a very prominent Lingayat and Virashaivite. But the most important part here is what they used to do. Do they used to cremate or do they used to bury the body? These are the points which you have to keep in mind. Fine. We'll talk about them later also when we are reading class 12 chapter 6. Anything which comes again and again, that becomes important. See, understand one thing. When we are talking about Virashaivas, when we are talking about Basavannas, when we are talking about Lingayats, so they compose their verses. Those were known as Vachanas. That is Vachana. Similarly, when we will go to Maharashtra, and there we will talk about the Bhakti movement in Maharashtra. They also wrote their, sloks and verses, and they were known as Abhangas. So you have to understand these terms are different. Where you will use Vachanas, where you will use Abhangas, they can give you all these terms, Vachanas, Abhangas, and then they can tell you to match the following, which is associated with Virashaivas, which is associated with, Eknath, Tukaram, who were there in Maratha Bhakti movement. So these are the points which you have to keep in mind. Fine. So again, there is one Virashaiva Vachana. They were very radical for their time, and what they are talking about, see, the rich people can make temple, and what can a poor man do? So here they are saying that they will give their whole body. What is the temple that Basavanna is offering to God? He is offering his own body because he cannot afford to make a temple for God because he is poor. So all these things, all these quotes, if you read these quotes of class 7 chapter 6 and even class 12 chapter 6, you will realize that they were much ahead of their time. So again, philosophical tone aside, what are the things which we have to keep in mind? Virashaivas, Vachanas, and when we are talking about Marathi and Manush and this Bhakti movement in South Central India rather, so there they have something known as, the sloks or verses are known as Abhangas. So these are the keywords which you have to keep in mind. Fine. So Vaishnav poet saints of Maharashtra, Gyaneshwar, Namdev, Eknath, Tukaram, they were devotees of Vitthal. See, Vitthal and Virupaksha temple, this we have also talked about when we were talking about Vijayanagar Empire, So in Vijayanagar Empire, we have discussed that earlier they were Shaivites, later on they converted to Vaishnavites, and that is written in a text called Prapannamritam. Virupaksha associated with Shaivites and Vitthal associated with Vaishnavite. So here also you are seeing the same Lord Vitthal, which is a form of Vishnu. And they have something known as, this is known as Pandharpur movement, that was the place where Vitthal temple was located. And here there will be two forms of, Bhakti movement in Maharashtra. One is Varkari movement and other is Dharkari movement. Varkari and Dharkari. So Varkari sect will say that we have to go every year to Pandharpur or to this particular Vitthal temple. Dharkari will say that instead of going every year to this particular Pandharpur or Vitthal temple, we should be looking inside us. God is within us. We should be looking for purity of conduct. All these things will be told by Dharkari movement. We'll talk about it when we are seeing the slides. So remember these points, these are important, especially the highlighted part. And again, when we talk about why Bhakti movement emerged in South, etc., and the reason, so we generally see that the people who are, the proponents of Bhakti movement, many of them are coming from the lower caste. Just like we are talking about Marathi Bhakti movement, most of these people were from untouchable Mahar caste. So keep that in mind. But the most important part here is Virashaivas, Vachanas, and Marathi Bhakti movement, Abhangas, the sloks or phrases. Fine. now there will be different Bhakti movement sects and division, and they will have different thinkings. Like one particular sect, even if you talk about Guru Nanak ji, so there are two attributes, Nirgun Bhakti and Shagun Bhakti. Guru Nanak ji advocated Nirgun Bhakti, that is God without attributes, and that's why even in movies, when you are seeing Guru Nanak Dev ji's movies, you will see that he is represented as Prakash Punj, you know, as a what do you say, module of light, or a he's just made of light. You cannot see him in physical form. That is Nirguna Bhakti. And then there is Shagun Bhakti, where you are representing God with attributes, God in anthropomorphic form, like we represent Vishnuji, Shivaji, Shiva, etc. Other gods rather. So here again there are other divisions also. There will be some Bhakti sense who will be saying that no, you have to leave your house, you have to leave everything aside, and you have to become an ascetic monk. Then there will be people like Guru Nanak ji, and even when you are talking about this Pandharpur movement in Maharashtra, which will lead to later on Marathi Asmita, and that will be tapped by Marathas, and we'll talk about that later on. So here they are saying that no, you don't have to leave everything apart. When we are talking about Pandharpur or Vitthal movement in Maharashtra, you can live with your family, do your jobs, but at the same time keep on reciting God's name, which is also known as Jap, which will also be later on performed by Bhakti saints like Dadu Dayal. So these are some points. Good evening, Sundaram, which you have to keep in mind. Fine. We are still at class 7, chapter 6, and you have to remember these things. Like later on what will happen, we'll see some maps when we'll go to class 12, chapter 6, and then there are some names like Shankar Dev, he belonged to which particular place, you know, Narsim Mehta, he was from which particular area, Mirabai, she was from which particular area. So you have to remember their location also, that from where they were, because they can give you these kind of questions as well. Fine. Now this is very important. Just like Virashaivas, they had something known as Vachanas. This Marathi devotional hymns are known as Abhangas. So these words you have to keep in mind. Now, Nathpanthis, Siddhas and Yogis, like we were seeing up, we're talking about Pandharpur movement. We'll talk about them later on also. So Pandharpur movement was of the view that you don't need to leave your family. You can live with your family. Here, live is L-I-V-E. You stay with your family and just do the jap or recite Vittal's name or Vishnu Bhagwan's name. That is what you have to do. In the case of Nathpanthi, Siddhas and Yogi, they are saying that you have to leave this world. You have to leave this materialistic world, and you have to believe in the formless ultimate reality. Formless ultimate reality means God has no form. And here they are talking about something known as Nirguna Bhakti. So please remember these terms. What is Nirguna Bhakti? What is Shaguna Bhakti? What is, and again, what this Nathpanthi, Siddhas and Yogis are saying, how it is different from what Vitthal, you know, the Pandharpur movement guys are saying. Club in French Revolution, third state created to revolt. Exactly, that's what we were talking about, that it is related to French Revolution. But let's focus on the things which we are studying right now. Fine. Islam and Sufism, this we'll talk about in, I think, tomorrow or day after tomorrow when we are talking about Sufism. Currently, we have to focus on Bhakti movement and its component. So please pay attention to that. These chapters you can easily get from ncert.nic.in, and the portions which are highlighted, pay attention to those areas. You don't have to, you know, read each and every portion or chapter in entirety. So if we talk about other things which are related, what is important from exam perspective? Let me make it bigger. Like we are talking about Shankar Dev, Assam, you know. Then we were talking about Vitthal movement, Pandharpur movement, Varkari and Dharkari sect, Maharashtra. Then we were talking about Virashaivas or Lingayats, Karnataka. Similarly, remember Chaitanya Dev, Bengal. So please remember the name and their location. That is actually very important. Okay. Shia Muslim versus Sunni Muslim. Okay, you are talking about Nirgun versus Shagun. Now this map is actually important, and this map you will see a lot when you are, you know, reading about Bhakti movement, the location of all these people. And later on we have to talk about these personalities as well, along with their time period. You have to pay attention to time period, because UPSC has already asked questions that who was the Bhakti sent, Basavanna, who was the Bhakti sent when, you know, like when Babar took over, which of the following Bhakti saints were there, Guru Nanak ji, Dadu Dayal and some other options. So here, not only where these guys were, like Guru Nanak ji was born in Pakistan. So not only that he was born in Pakistan, the other thing which is also important is what is his time period, 15th to 16th century, and here also the dates are important. Again, Dadu Dayal. We'll talk about Dadu Dayal and his thambas and all those things and how he used to believe in jap. So again, here also you have to see his timeline. When was he active? We'll talk about that. So where they are active, Shankar Dev is one of the most important personality in this particular map. You could not forget about him because they talk a lot. NCERT talks a lot about Shankar Dev in both class 7 chapter 6 and class 12 chapter 6. And plus, Shankar Dev also remains in news because something or the other happens in Assam and he had some mathas, etc. So around those mathas, people of other religions settled in, and currently Hemanta Biswa Sarma, some time back, he gave some order that the people who were settling around those mathas, they have to leave those areas. So Shankar Dev is very famous, one of the most prominent personality in Assam, and not only in Assam, in whole of India, especially Eastern India. So Shankar Dev you cannot forget, Chaitanya Dev Bengal, Narsimha Mehta Gujarat, Eknath Tukaram, Gyaneshwar, Namdev, Varkari, Dharkari movement. We'll talk about it. This is associated to Vitthal or Pandharpur movement. What is Vitthal or Pandharpur movement? There was a Vitthal temple in Pandharpur region. Vitthal is Lord Vishnu. We have talked about Vitthal temple even when we were talking about Vijayanagar Empire. So pay attention. Zoom. Do I need to zoom more? Okay, let me zoom more. Hope you can see it better now. Fine. So this map is important. You have to pay attention to this particular map. We'll talk about this more later on. See, Shankar Dev, you can see it in class 7 chapter 6 that we are talking about Shankar Dev. Even in class 12 chapter 6, you will see that we will talk about Shankar Dev a lot. Charita, can you see it now? I have zoomed it more. So Shankar Dev, Eka Sarna Nama Dharma. They can ask you this particular question. Eka Sarna Nama Dharma is attributed to which of the following Bhakti sent? What is the meaning here? Supreme surrender to one. And here also you will see a competition between Shaivites and Vaishnavites. And when you are seeing these Bhakti sents, you will see not Vaishnavite, they were like, we have to believe in a formless God or formless reality. We'll talk about that. Fine. So, Eka Sarna Nama Dharma, supreme surrender to the one. He encouraged establishment of chhatras or monasteries, and they are in news in current events because of the things which are happening around these chhatras or monasteries associated with Shankar Dev. So you have to remember them. His major composition included Kirtan Ghosha. We'll talk about it. Don't worry too much about it. I will tell you what is important and what is not. Surdas, and we'll talk about Surdas later on. Again, see here, Shankar Dev will come again. Shankar Dev of Assam, who emphasized devotion to Vishnu. And this you will see again if you talk about Mirabai, if you talk about Shankar Dev, if you talk about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. More or less Vaishnavites or Alvars are ruling the roost when it comes to northern India. Same is not the case in southern India, but even then you can see that in North India, Alvars are very famous, or Vaishnavite worshipping is very famous. Fine. He began the practice of setting up Namghars or houses of recitation and prayer. So again, these are the terms which you have to remember. Shankar Dev, I am reiterating it again and again. He is very important. Today's lecture, there are certain conceptual things, but there are so many names and personalities. So the more you see them, the more you will be able to remember them. Mirabai, Krishna devotee. Krishna is again a form of Vishnu Charita. So this tradition was included again. Dadu Dayal, we have to talk about him a lot. We'll talk about him in PPTs. Like he did not believe too much in going to temples, etc. He was like, you do your worldly works, whatever works you have, you just do the Naam Jap. You may have seen your father or grandfather, they are sitting and watching some Kaun Banega Crorepati or whatever, and then they are doing a Jap. They are just, changing and doing the scrolling of the whole everything. So that is Jap. And Dadu Dayal used to talk a lot about Jap, and he was a follower of Kabir. So we'll talk about Dadu Dayal later on as well. Mirabai, Rajput princess, again, Mewar kingdom. There is a difference between Mewar and Marwar. What is the basic difference between Mewar and Marwar? If you know it, you can post it in the comment section. Yes, Dadu Miya, will talk about him. Then see here, Geet Govind Jaydev. That also talks about Bhakti tenets and all those things, devotion, fine. But more than the Bhakti tenets and, songs, etc., you have to remember this name. Geet Govind, who wrote, Jaydev wrote. Just like you talk about, different books, Mritshikatika, Shudrak wrote, or you talk about Mudra Rakshasa, Vishakha Datta wrote, or you talk about Devi Chandraguptam, Vishakha Datta wrote, or you talk about Abhigyana Shakuntalam, Kalidas wrote. Just remember this name, who wrote Geet Govind. Even when we talk about music per se later on, you will see so many notes, etc. are there in Geet Govind. So Geet Govind becomes very important book from exam perspective. Fine. Mirabai. So again, she she was a devotee of Vishnu, Krishna, as you people are saying in the comment section. So his husband tried to poison him, and that is what she has written here, song composed by Mirabai. Kabir. Now, when we talk about Kabir, and again, he is one personality, just like Shankar Dev, more famous than Shankar Dev, so to say, that will be mentioned in both class 7 chapter 6 as well as class 12 chapter 6. The thing which you have to keep in mind is, Hindus believe that Kabir belonged to them, Muslims believe that Kabir belonged to them. And when you will see his dohas, his couplets and everything, which is there in Kabir Panthi and all those, Bijak, we'll talk about that. So you will realize that he is condemning both Hindus as well as Muslims. He's saying that one particular community is killing cow, other particular community is killing goat. And I'm not kidding, I will show you that particular quote which is there in class 12 chapter 6, because I don't want to die. You people will kill me in the comment section. Now what is important here? That his verses are known as Sakhis and Pats. Again, let's rewind. When we're talking about Virashaivas or Lingayats, their quotes or their phrases were known as Vachanas. When we're talking about Pandharpur movement, Gyandev Tukaram, then their shloks, their verses are known as Abhangas. So here when we are talking about Kabir, his verses are known as Shakhis or Pats. So these points you have to keep in mind. These are actually very important. Kabir poems are so nice. Yes, they are. And I will see that. So Guru Granth Sahib, Panchwani and Bijak, there these Kabir quotes are preserved. So when we talk about Guru Granth Sahib, you have to also understand there is another thing which is known as Adi Granth Sahib. So Adi Granth Sahib, Guru Granth Sahib. So Adi Granth Sahib is what? The first 5 Sikh Gurus, their teaching that is compiled in, that is there in Adi Granth Sahib. Then Guru Granth Sahib, 10th Guru, Sikh Guru, he compiled all the teachings of the previous 9 Guru, including his teachings, and that book is called as Guru Granth Sahib. Later on, Guru Granth Sahib became the 11th Guru, because Guru Pratha was abolished after 10 Sikh Gurus, so that this Guru Pratha, or this should not be used in a demeaning manner, or should not be misused rather. That's why 11th Guru is known as Guru Granth Sahib. These are the points which you have to keep in mind. Panchwani and Bijak, these are like the teachings of Dadu Dayal and Kabir. They are there in Panchwani and Bijak. We'll talk about it later on as well. So here is a composition of Kabir. Here he is not talking about that one is killing cow and other thing. We'll talk about that when we see class 12 chapter 6. Why bump your head on the ground? Why bath your body in water? You kill and you call yourself humble, but your vices you conceal. Again, you can have a look at this. I will show you one very interesting quote later on also. So what is the purpose here? The purpose is for you to realize who are the personalities who are important from exam perspective. He openly ridiculed all forms of external worship of both Brahmanical Hinduism and Islam, and he said some very radical things, and he believed in a formless supreme God. Now, let's pause here for some time. So here Kabir, we are talking about class 7 chapter 6, he is saying that he believed in a formless, or this particular chapter is saying that formless supreme God he believed in. So is it Nirgun Bhakti or is it Shagun Bhakti? What do you want to say? What NCERT is saying? Kabir, if they ask you or they give you one particular statement, Bhakti movement is very dicey, very tricky. So you have to be very attentive here. And these 2 chapters are the core of yours, like study, should be the core. So tell me one thing, Kabir believed in Nirguna Bhakti or he believed in Shaguna Bhakti? What is your view regarding that? Which kind of Bhakti he believed in? As Sundaram is saying, Nirguna Bhakti. So keep these points in mind. Same will go with Baba Guru Nanak. He will also believe in Nirguna Bhakti. Now, what are the things which are important from exam perspective? He was born in Pakistan, Talwandi region. And then see here, currently where we go, where we do the Matha Tekna and everything, and that is known as Gurudwaras. Earlier they were known as Dharmsal. So again, these are the words which you have to keep in mind. Dharmsal were like currently known as Gurudwaras. What was the earlier name of Gurudwara? Dharmsal. Fine. Then second Guru, Guru Angad. So he started compiling the teachings that will become, that will take shape of Adi Granth Sahib by the time of 5th Guru. And he also gave, rise to one particular new script which is known as Gurumukhi. So again, there is a question from exam perspective. Which particular Guru, Sikh Guru, is associated with the formation of new script known as Gurumukhi? You have to remember Guru Angad. And we are currently again in class 7 chapter 6 only. See, just like Pandharpur movement, just like, Eknath Tukaram, we talk about Gyandev and all those. So they said that you can live in your house, just do the Naam Japna and believe in God Vitthal, God Vishnu. Similar kind of thing is said by Guru Nanak. Although he's talking about Nirgun Bhakti, on the other hand, Vitthal and Pandharpur movement of Maharashtra will talk about Shagun Bhakti because they will talk about Vishnu and they will represent him in anthropomorphic form. But there are some similarities here. Guru Nanak's insistence that his followers must be householders and should adopt productive and useful occupation. Unlike Nath Panthis, Siddhas and yogis who were saying that no, you have to leave this world and you have to do this, become a monk and all those things. That is not advocated by Guru Nanak as well as Vitthal or Pandharpur movement. Fine. Later on they are saying that by the time of Guru Gobind Singh it became, and there are certain interesting things which class 12 chapter 6 says that Guru Nanak Dev, he initially did not think about making, a separate religion called Sikhism. That whole thing developed during a period of later Gurus, and again I will show you those lines so that you don't kill me in the comment section. So by the time of Guru Gobind Singh, it became a political entity. This whole, the group of six, they became a political entity and Khalsa was formed. We'll talk about it, what is Khalsa Panth later on also, because that will emerge when we are talking about Mughals as well. Akbar says some people will pray only when they are sad, not happy times. A true devotee prays all the time. Wow, such a good quote, Charita. Very nice and very, it has deep meaning. Fine. So let's focus here. I think this is it for class 7 chapter 6. Pay attention to the important terms which we have talked about. When we will go to Sufism in the next lecture, we'll again come to these two particular chapters. Currently we are focused on the Bhakti part. In the next lecture, we'll take these two chapters along with the other things and we'll be focused on the Sufi part. Because if you take both parts together, you will get super confused. They are very important from exam perspective. So again, class 12 chapter 6, 8th to 18th century Bhakti Sufi tradition. We are focused on the Bhakti tradition right now. And again, Manika Vachakar. Manika Vachakar, pardon me my South friends if I am pronouncing his name wrong. He was there even in class 7 chapter 6 if you go and revise it. Now tell me one thing. He is a Shaivite or he is an Alvar or Nayanar? I should make it bigger so that you can see it in a better manner. So we were talking about 12 Alvars, 63 Nayanars, and the question which emerges, should I make it more bigger? Let me make it more bigger. Can you see it? These two chapters, I will keep on saying it again and again and again and again. So if somebody asks you, Manika Vachakar, who is he? He is an Alvar or Nayanar. What will you say? A bit. Okay. I have to make it bigger some more. So let me make it some more bigger. So Manika Vachakar, 12 Alvars, 63 Nayanars. There is a question which we were talking about even in class 7 chapter 6, that what are the Alvars or who are those Alvars and Nayanars whom we cannot forget. You cannot remember 12 Alvars and 63 Nayanars. That is virtually impossible. You will kill yourself. Don't kill yourself for anything, You have to live, you have to outlive your enemies, and that is what Satan says. So again, the answer is here. See bros, here what is written? Manika Vachakar, a devotee of Shiva. Now tell me whether he is an Alvar or Nayanar. Charita is saying something. Pay attention, and that's how you will understand which Alvar and Nayanar you have to remember. If class 7 chapter 6, class 12 chapter 6 NCERT, they keep on talking about certain Alvars and Nayanars, you have to remember them, They can give you a question, they can give you these upper and all those personalities and ask you to match them, who are Alvars and who are Nayanars. So he is a devotee of Shiva. So that means he is a Nayanar, bro. We have discussed all these things. So Manika Vachakar, he is very important. He is mentioned in both the chapters, class 7 chapter 6 as well as class 12 chapter 6. Now there are some terms. In class 12 chapter 6, there are certain terms which you have to remember. Like they can ask you, great tradition refers to, little tradition refers to. What does it mean? So great tradition refers to, what does it mean? Let's say there are some common people. And sometimes common people are forced to do certain things because the king and the Brahmin class or the upper class are forcing them to adopt certain traditions. So those are known as great tradition according to sociologist Robert Redfield. And why we are reading about it? Because NCERT talks about it in a special box. Then the second term is little tradition. So whatever customs we have in our localized culture and we are following it without any pressure from external forces or agents, those are little tradition. So please remember these words. You cannot deduce them in exam hall because anyway there is too much pressure on you. So can you see great and little tradition, what is written here? Class 12 chapter 6 page number 2 we are talking about, and that is actually important. Fine. So you can have a look at it, you can read it in your spare time. Then what is important here? I will tell you what are the things which you have to focus on. Jagannath temple, Puri, form of Vishnu, we have talked about it when we were talking about, temple architecture also. This way you also remember that this particular personality is important. We have talked about, black pagoda, white pagoda. So tell me one thing, when we were talking about Jagannath temple of Puri, so which kind of pagoda it was? It was a white pagoda or black pagoda? If you know it, you can post it in the comment section. That's how revision happens. Awesome. Then what is important here? I will just tell you. So when you will see and when we'll talk about Bhakti movement in detail later on, right now we're just trying to understand the basic intricacies of Bhakti movement. So you will see it emerged in South India. What are the reasons for it? We'll talk about it later on, or maybe you have already seen some videos which I have made. So there are multiple reasons. One reason which talks about the emergence of Bhakti movement is that they emerged as a reaction against the rising popularity of Buddhism and Jainism. Buddhism and Jainism, they were very popular during the Sangam period, and they were very popular even after that in southern India, and Hinduism was fighting for its survival, and the way of revitalizing Hinduism was seen by Shankaracharya as, the philosophy of Advaita, which led to the origin of Bhakti movement, so to say, in South India. So please remember these terms, please remember these words. This is important. We'll talk about it later on as well. So now let's first of all focus on what are the things which we have to keep in mind. Tantric practices, etc., etc. Again, we'll talk about this. This is not very important. And here the talks are going on that relations with other traditions such as Buddhism or Jainism were also often fraught with tension, if not open conflict. I have continuously talked about Bharat Ek Khoj. In Bharat Ek Khoj, there is an episode, we'll see that in the slides, which is related to Appar, where you can see Appar is there in Pallava King Mahindra Varman's court, and he is talking about that he was a Shaivite, he was a Nayanar, and he was talking about Buddha means Hinduism, what Shaiv means Nayanars, and what like worshipping Shiva has done to him, and how his whole perspective has changed. And in that quote only you will see Buddhist guy and Jaina guys. So you will see an intense fight for even a royal patronage. That's what this particular NCERT is also talking about. Fine. And some people also believe that it was a reaction of lower caste against upper caste. We'll talk about it later on as well. Shagun and Nirgun Bhakti, this also we have talked when we were discussing class 7 chapter 6. Kabir, Nanak, they promote Nirgun Bhakti, that is God is formless. Then when we talk about Shiv Bhagwan, when we talk about Alvars, when we talk about Nayanars, they are promoting Shagun Bhakti. God has attributes, and that's why we are representing God in anthropomorphic form. So today notification didn't come. Oh my God, Charita. It will come. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. Don't worry too much about it. Like, I think at around 12 o'clock we had. Subscribe the channel and click the bell notification, Charita. Then you will get these notifications. Fine. So again, Alvars and Nayanars, we have seen the mnemonic, how we will remember these names. Alvars and Nayanars. Nayanars, Nayan eyes, who has a third eye, Shiva. So Nayanars associated with Shiva, Alvar associated with Vishnu. Fine. Then see here, again, Tondara, Poddi, again, don't forget, means focus too much on these guys. It's tough to remember all the names. Just remember Appar, just remember Manikava Sagar, and then we'll talk about some other personalities who are very important from exam perspective. Very good, Charita. Subscribe, only subscribe will not do. You have to also click on the bell notification if you want to get it. Again, I'm just kidding. So let's focus here. Again, in class 7, chapter 6, we have talked about Nala Ira Divya Prabandham associated with Alvars, associated with Vaishnavites, which is also referred as Tamil Veda. This also we have discussed in when we were talking about class 7, chapter 6. So Nala Ira Divya Prabandham, Tamil Veda, but I have told you, see here what they are saying, was frequently described as Tamil Veda, because when you go to South India and when you see Tamil Veda, even Tirukullar, which we were talking about Sangam text, Tirukullar, written by Tiruvalluvar, that is also sometimes referred as Tamil Veda. And that is not all. There are other texts also which are referred to as Tamil Veda. But let's say they ask you which of the following book is known as Tamil Veda, and there is one option called Nala Ira Div Prabandham, and you don't have Tirukullar there. So take Nala Ira Div Prabandham. So this is related to Alvar. The book which is related to Nayanar, which is very important, is Tivaram. So remember these names. These names are very important. You cannot forget them, because they are mentioned in class 7 chapter 6 and class 12 chapter 6. Then upper, a Nayanar scent, a Bharat Ek Khoj episode is on him, so you have to remember him. And also remember which scent he is. Again, see Nalaira, Divya Prabandham, Tivaram, they keep on coming again and again. That means these names are important, and that's why NCERT is mentioning them so much. Oh my God. Now, relation with the state. This is what we were talking about, that there is a fight of royal patronage among Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism. And Buddhism and Jainism anyway was very popular in South India from Sangam age. So Hinduism, they felt like the only way to revitalize them was, to propound the theory of Advaita, Bhakti movement, and that is what is being talked about here. And they will fiercely oppose Buddhism and Jainism. Then at one point of time in these particular chapters or pages, NCERT is talking about that at one particular point of time, these Alvars and Nayanars will become so popular, 12 Alvars and 63 Nayanars, that in some areas, they will be even worshipped as God by Vellalars peasants. Vellalars, they are rich peasants, just like you have Jotedars in North India. So, there will be some rulers like Chola kings who will even make, or represent Alvars and Nayanars in God form. So, hope you are understanding. This is again a way to gain legitimacy from the subjects, because if you want to gain legitimacy, you have to accept what subjects are accepting, or you have to worship what subjects are worshipping. At one point of time, subjects were worshipping Alvars and Nayanars. So these things, all mixed religion, CBA, fine. Shiva as Nataraja, this is like Chola Rajas, they popularize representing Shiva as Nataraja. Fine. Chola King Parantaka I. When we are talking about Chola ruler Parantaka I, you don't have to do PhD on Cholas per se when it comes to UPSC Prelims 2025. You have to remember what we have talked about in temple architecture. Then Chola ruler Parantaka I is also associated with local democratic assemblies. Then he is also associated with making Appar, Sammandar, Sundarar, who are Nayanars, or representing them as, metal images or as gods, forms of gods. So these things are important. Do remember it. Chola ruler Parantaka I located or associated with Uttaramerur inscription. We talk about inscriptions. There was one lecture or first lecture we were talking about inscriptions, sources and Stone Age. So Uttaramerur inscription talks about local democratic assemblies in South India associated with Chola ruler Parantaka I. These points you have to keep it in mind. Fine, sir and ma'am. Let's move on. Virashaiva, see bros, in class 7 chapter 6, they talked about Virashaivas a lot. Here also they are talking about Virashaiva. Someday somebody asked me that, sir, Virashaivas and Lingayas, are they same but different? They are same, they are not different. Virashaivas and means Lingayas, they are the radicalist. Just like when we talk about socio-religious reform movement, you will hear about Derozios, Henry Vivian Derozio and young Derosians. Surendranath Banerjee was very inspired by these Derosians because they used to ask so many radical questions at that particular point of time. So many people believe that Virashaivas or the Lingayats were the Derosians of their period, or even more aggressive and more prominent than the Derosians. They ask so many questions, and we have seen how different, like they are part of Hinduism, but unlike most of the Hindu people who, do the cremation, they will bury us because they believe after we are buried, we will merge with Shiva, whom they used to worship. So Virashaivas and Lingayats, they are same, don't confuse them, and Basavanna is the one who is the founder of this particular Virashaiva and Lingayat movement. They worshipped Shiva as Lingayat again. What are the terms which are important? In class 7 chapter 6, we have talked about Virashaivas. Their sloks of verses are known as Vachanas. That you have to remember. Vitthal, Pandharpur movement, their sloks of verses were known as what? Again, you can post it in the comment section. And the wandering monks are known as Jangamana. So these are the terms which you have to keep in mind. There will be so many terms, you can get confused. But class 7, chapter 6, class 12, chapter 6, I have advertised NCERT a lot today. That will come to your rescue. That will tell you which terms you have to focus on. Very good. Now there are some other terms here. Here is a Vachana composed by Basavanna when they see a serpent. Now this is actually a very interesting Vachana. We'll talk about it. But first of all, let's focus on some more terms here given in NCERT. That will tell you what areas are important, like Dharma Shastra. So there are two words here. One is called as Dharma Shastra, other is called Dharma Sutra. So you have to understand the difference between them. Very good here. Dharma Shastra and Dharma Sutra. So Dharma Sutra is a commentary of Vedas. So you take 4 Vedas and the commentary of Vedas is known as Dharma Sutra. Many people believe that Dharma Shastra in a way is a commentary of Dharma Sutra. It is a, it's a subset of Dharma Sutra, or sometimes it is also doing commentary of Puranas. So if somebody asks you out of Dharma Sutra and Dharma Shastra, which is more important, Dharma Sutra is more important. They are the commentaries of Vedas. Later on, Dharma Shastra did commentary on everything. They did commentary on Vedas, they did commentary on Dharma Sutras, they did commentary on even Puranas. But many people feel that Dharma Sutra is up at the upper level and Dharma Shastra lies below Dharma Sutra. That means, hope you understood some part of it. That's what you have to understand. These Dharma Shastra and Dharma Sutra are in general commentary of Vedas. Dharma Sutra, especially Vedas. Dharma Shastra also do commentary on Puranas and other Dharma Sutras. That's what you have to remember, nothing more than that. So Lingayats, their Vachanas, there is this one Vachana. When they see a serpent carved in stone, they pour milk on it. So you have a Naga in stone form, you will pour milk. When you will see a real snake, you will kill it. To the servant of the god who can eat, you say go away, go away. But to the image of God which cannot eat, they offer dishes of food. How radical they still are, bro. How radical are the Vachanas of Lingayats or Virashaiva still are. They are awesome. I love them. Fine, bros. Let's move on. So Lingayats challenge the idea of caste and... Just give me a second, bros. I have underlined so many things that everything is merging here. These things are important. Lingayats are important. Virashaivas are important. Vachanas are important. They are in use in current affairs because of the reservation thing. That is also important. So don't forget them. Vachanas composed in which particular language? That is Kannada. They can even ask you that Abhangas related to Vithala Pandharpur movement composed majorly in which language? So what you will write in the comment section? Naga Panchami. New religious developments, again. Bhakti movement in Maharashtra, that is Vitthal and Pandharpur movement, and they have something known as Vachanas. Abhangas, we have talked about it, fine. So here see, there is a time lag. Religious ferment in North India. So from 7th, 8th, 9th century, you are seeing this Bhakti movement in South India, and NCERT is saying that historians have not found evidence of anything resembling the composition of Alvars and Nayanars till the 14th century. Why? This whole Bhakti movement arrived so late in North India. We have discussed about it. We will discuss about it later on as well. First of all, let me complete this particular chapter. So Nath Yogis and Siddhas, this also we have discussed in class 7 chapter 6, where they were talking about leaving this world, renunciation of this world. That is important. Unlike Vitthal or Pandharpur movement, unlike Guru Nanak, who is saying that you can do all the works of all your homely affairs, and at the same time you can do the jap. Just do the jap of your God, whichever God you believe in. If the image becomes smaller, do tell me in the comment section. Islamic tradition, here we have to talk about Sufism. We'll talk about it in the next class along with the slides and everything. Right now, let's focus on Bhakti movement. That in itself is very big. Just give me a second. So, hope you have understood by this particular point of time that class 7 chapter 6 and class 12 chapter 6, they are very important from exam perspective. Class 12 chapter 7 also we have done in the previous lecture. Can anybody tell me what class 12 chapter 7 was associated with which particular topic? You can post it in the comment section. Again, the growth of Sufism, just give me. Anyone? So all these images or all these pages which you are seeing of NCERT class 12, unlike class 7 chapter 6, which was around 18 pages, this is 30 pages, class 12. Obviously, you have grown up now. You are in class 12, so you will read more. All these pages relate to Sufism. And some more Sufism. That shows how important they are. And they are actually important. UPSC asked them here, there, everywhere. Again, Amir Khusro call related to Sufism only. We'll talk about it in the next lecture. My hands are having an issue now. Just give me a second. All these texts, all these images, Sufism. Now, we are back to Bhakti movement. Kabir, we have talked about Kabir even in class 7 chapter 6. We'll talk about him right now also, and we'll talk about him in slides also. Kabir, his Nirgun Bhakti, both of them, like Hindu and Muslim, they said that Kabir belonged to them and Kabir condemned both of them. So Vijayanagar Kritika is saying, see here. So God is called by many names. This is one of the Kabir, pads which we have talked about, or his verses. God is called by many names, names like Allah, Ram, Rahim, Kareem, Keshav, etc. Gold may be shaped into rings and bangles, but isn't it gold all the same? So it's all gold, you can just call him by other names. In class 7, chapter 6, I have told you that he has condemned both Hindus and Muslims. See what he has written. One kills the goat, the other cows. They waste their lives in disputation. Man, he was too radical. If I had not shown you this, God knows what would have happened. See here. Now there are some terms which you have to remember. Kabir Bijak is preserved by Kabir Pan, the followers of Kabir. And it is in Varanasi. And then there is Kabir Granthavali, even in Adi Granth Sahib. See, understand. We have to understand the names. What is Adi Granth Sahib? The teachings of first 5 gurus. And Guru Granth Sahib, the teaching of all 10 gurus. And later on, Guru Granth Sahib is known as 11th Guru, because Guru Pratha ended after 10 gurus. So these are the things which you have to keep in mind. Nirgun and Shagun Bhakti we have already talked about. Ultimate reality is Allah, Khuda, Hazrat or Peer. And then he has given some names. Brahman and Atman we have talked about. Nirakar means who has no akar or who is formless. He is talking about Nirgun Bhakti. Then what else is there in NCERT? Anything more important? Julahas again. Baba Guru Nanak, this we have about him we have talked about in class 7, chapter 6 as well. Class 12, chapter 6 is also talking about, and based on UPSC PYQs, what is important about Baba Guru Nanak? Where he was born in Pakistan, which time period he was born, 1469 to 1539. So again the question is, which has already been asked by UPSC, was he a contemporary of Babar? Yes or no? Post it in the comment section. Was Guru Nanak a contemporary of Babar? Yes, very good. Dark has given the answer. Charit. Was Guru Nanak sir, or Baba Guru Nanak, a contemporary of Krishna Dev Roy? So again, he's talking about Nirgun Bhakti, that God has no form, and that's why he's represented as a Prakash Punj. You don't see Guru Nanak sir in physical form, or Baba Guru Nanak in physical form, when he is shown in any particular movie per se. And his hymns are known as Shabad. It is not Shabd, it is Shabad. I was watching some time back when I was on Instagram. I'm not on Instagram anymore. So there was a quote, Achhe Shabad bolo beta, Achhe Shabad bolo. That means say good things, don't say bad things at all. It sounds very cute, Shabad. I like it. Fine. So then there are certain terms here. What is Sangat, what is Langat and Pangat? We'll talk about all those terms. And see here, this is the controversial part. And that's why I'm very thankful to NCERT that they have written all these things and saved me. In class 7, chapter 6, we have talked about Baba Guru Nanak, and I told you at that time that he did not wish to establish a new religion. That all happened after him, like from 2nd Guru to 10th Guru, and by the time of 10th Guru, it became a political movement, or even it had some military aspects as well during the period of Guru Gobind Singh. So Guru Nanak did not wish to establish a new religion, and they can even give you this in prelims, that he did not wish to establish a new religion, and you'll be like, oh my god, this is so wrong. No, NCERT is saying it. If NCERT says yes, yes. If NCERT says no, no. If NCERT says Baba Guru Nanak did not wish to establish a new religion, that's what you will believe in, because UPSC follow NCERT. And then the talks are going on related to what is Adi Granth Sahib, teachings up until 5th Guru, Adi Granth Sahib, teachings up until 10th Guru, Guru Granth Sahib, and that is what is written here. And then during a period of Guru Gobind Singh, Khalsa Panth happened, Army of the Pure. So you are saying Sikhism is acquiring a political as well as military nature. 5 symbols, uncut hair, dagger, pair of swords, comb and steel bangle. Fine. Mirabai, as we have discussed in class 7, chapter 6, that when we talk about Bhakti movement in North India, you will see Vaishnavism cult is winning over Shaivism cult. And Mirabai and her love for Krishna, the avatar of Vishnu, is showing you the same. And this we have also discussed, that Mirabai's husband wanted, like according to NCERT, wanted to poison him, and she's saying the same thing. What can Mewar ruler do to me, etc., etc. You can have a look at it. One point which people talk about Bhakti movement a lot is, Bhakti movement is a reaction of lower class against the upper class, or reaction against Brahmanical supremacy. Some way it is similar to the emergence of Buddhism and Jainism in 6th century BC. And that you can see from these examples. Rai Das was a leather worker. Even Kabir came from very humble background. Same will go with different bhakti sense. Even when you talk about Eknath, Tukaram, you will realize their humble beginnings. That all gives credence to the fact that most of these bhakti sense were from lower caste, and this bhakti movement was a reaction of lower caste against upper caste, that, you know, God is not only accessible to a few, God is accessible to everyone. Shankar Dev, see again Shankar sir is coming. Shankar Dev sir is coming. He was there and he has occupied a major portion or good portion of class 7 chapter 6. Shankar Dev, Assam, establishment of Chhatras and monasteries, and we have discussed about it that around these Chhatras and monasteries, some people of other religions settled, and the current Assam CM, Himanta Biswa Sarma, he told them to like move out of that particular place, and that's why Chhatras and monasteries and Shankar Dev remains in news. You have to keep a tab on him and what is happening in Assam. Fine. Yes. Very good. Vachanas of Basavanna, Abhangas of Pandharpur movement, and Kasful Malfuzat and all these didactic, and these we will read when we are talking about Sufism. So that's it for these two chapters. Now let's go to PPT and let's talk about other stuff of, you know, Bhakti movement. So here also will not follow a chronological order. There are certain things which we have to follow, and then we will see the other slides. Like anybody who has watched this particular video of mine, which we uploaded yesterday on StudyIQ IAS channel, why did Bhakti movement start earlier in South than North? This is a basic question which we should understand. And the other things which we have seen in class 7 chapter 6 and class 12 chapter 6, those were the, you know, add-ons. Those are the things which are like important because they are in NCERT, but this is the basic thing. Have you seen that video of yesterday's? Anybody? If you have not seen it, I will just give you a brief gist. So Bhakti movement, 7th, 8th century AD, we see it emerging in South India. Alvars and Nayanars, you talk about Appar, you talk about Shankaracharya. Most of these people are from South India. Why South? Why not North? Because when you talk about the emergence of Bhakti movement, you are talking about early medieval India, EMI, which is from 750 to 1200 AD. And that period was a period of economic turmoil in North India, because we have seen after the period of Harsha, when we were talking about lecture 13, early medieval India, feudalism, that during that period deurbanization has happened. Ahit, Chhatra, Kaushambi, etc. towns, they were converting from urban area to village area. So people were facing issues. You know, trade was declining, economic turmoil was there. Religious discourse cannot happen in such unstable area, you know. So, and when we talk about South India per se, at that time, there were kingdoms in South India. South India was relatively much more prosperous compared to North India, and that's why religious intellectual people of religious domain, they started shifting towards South. First reason is this, economic turmoil in North India. Second reason is, people who have seen that video, you can post it in the comment section, political turmoil. If you talk about this early medieval India, you have seen the invasion of QGG. Qasim, Ghajni and Gauri. Mahmud Ghajni, he plundered India so many times between 1000 to 126 AD. Because of this political turmoil, people are fearful about their life. Do they have time to think about, you know, Vaishnavism, Shaivism or Bhakti? And all these things need a peaceful mind. When you are sure that you will not be killed when you are doing meditation or jap or something, you know. And that was not the period of, you know, political stability in North India. There was a turmoil going on in North India. Unlike South India, where you have Pallavas, Cholas, which were relatively stable. Cholas were winning Southeast Asia during that particular period. So this political stability will also ensure that religious discourse happen at a proper pace there, and that would lead to Bhakti movement starting in South India. Second point. What is the third point, sir and ma'am? Rajputization of North India. Rajputization of North India. What is Rajputization of North India? That means that when we are talking about this early medieval period, the first phase was 750 AD to 1000 AD, which was the period of Pala Pratiharas and Rajputas in North India. And then all the Gujara Pratihara won that tripartite struggle of Kannauj. All three lost. They all three, you know, broke apart, and especially from Gujara Pratihara emerged Rajputs, different Rajputs, Paramaras, Chaulukyas, and, you know, Gahadwalas, etc. We have talked about them. And the origin theory of Rajputs is still hazy. There are different theories. Many people believe that they emerged from tribals, Gonds, etc. They won some battles, they became Rajputs. Some people believe that they were of foreign origin, they belonged to Shakas, Hunas, etc. Third people believe that they were of mixed origin. These Shakas, means Kushanas, etc. They came to India, they married some people, indigenous people, those were called Rajputs. So these Rajput clan, whoever they were, they wanted to become Kshatriya. One community which will make them Kshatriya is Brahman community by performing rituals and sacrifices. There is one specific rituals and sacrifice which they used to do to convert people to another community, and that is known as Hiranyagarbha sacrifice. You will go as one community and you will come out as another community. There will be a rebirth of yours in that Hiranyagarbha sacrifice. Doing that particular sacrifice, many Rajputs became Kshatriya, and that whole process is known as Rajputization of North India or Kshatriyization of North India. And because of this, what happened? Brahmanical supremacy remained in North India. When we talk about Bhakti movement, that is generally seen as a reaction against Brahmanical supremacy or reaction of lower caste against upper caste, but the upper caste hegemony will remain in North India because Rajput will allow it to remain that way in North India. So this Rajputization of North India will also prevent Bhakti movement from starting in South India, means starting in North India. Jagannath temple in Puri, Mughals and Rajputs tried to capture, but they are not able to capture. Very good, yeah. So Rajputization of North India. Fourth point, reaction against Buddhism and Jainism. We have talked about it in Sangam age that Silapapadikaram, Mani Mekalai, these Sangam epics rather, or even Shivaka Sintamani and other Tamil epics which we are talking about, majorly revolving around Buddhism and Jainism. So Buddhism and Jainism, they became popular in South from Sangam age, and that thing continued even in early medieval period. So Hinduism was facing threat from Buddhism and Jainism, and the people in South, they felt like we have to do something to revitalize Hinduism, to give a new birth to Hinduism, to give a rebirth to Hinduism, and that rebirth came in the form of Bhakti movement in South India. So this is the fourth reason, that is reaction against Buddhism and Jainism. What is the fifth reason? Like we have talked about, the society in North India, the society is divided into Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. You have a vertical division of society, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. But when we are talking about South India, you had initially during the Sangam period, horizontal division of society, Kurinji, Mulai, Marudam, Niyadal, Palai, based on which kind of land you were living on. Later on, even in South India, the society got converted into Brahmans and non-Brahmans. In Indian national movement, you are seeing the reaction of these non-Brahmins against Brahmins in the form of Dravidian movement, which will lead to the formation of DMK, AIA, DMK, etc. Even before that, many people believe that Bhakti movement is also an example of reaction of non-Brahmins against Brahmins. So all these factors will lead to emergence of Bhakti movement first in South then North. Are you understanding what we are discussing, sir and ma'am? Self-respect movement. Charita is a good girl. Are you a girl, Charita? Hope I have. Like, fine. So these are the points. Did you understand these points, sir and ma'am? What we were discussing up until now? Right. So these are the points which has been mentioned here, that the concept of Bhakti movement is as old as Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita only you have the concept called Bhagavatism. This we have also discussed when we were talking about class 7 chapter 6. So in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatism rather, you have the concept of Bhaga, that your bhagya or faith will become like whatever is the faith of your God, that will become your faith. So concept is very old, the concept of bhakti, but this Bhakti movement took shape first in South India, and the reasons are given here. First point, economic turmoil in North India during early medieval India. That is what is written here. We have discussed this. Second point is political turmoil in North India. QGG, Qasim Ghazni Gauri. They will keep on attacking. They will keep on making North India politically unstable or unstable, and religious discourse majorly will happen in South India, because of which Bhakti movement will emerge first in South India. And here he is saying that inner peace. See, you need a peaceful place for such religious awakening to happen, and he is doing that. He is waiting for inner peace to come to him. Fine, sir and ma'am. Then Rajputization of North India, we have talked about this. Have a look at this. And reaction against Buddhist and Jaina dominance, and he is upper. This also we have discussed. Bipolarized society, that is Brahmins and non-Brahmins. And in non-Brahmins further, different caste also emerge. So later on, even in South India, you will see all these divisions, and non-Brahmins reacted against Brahmins, and this is bipolarized society, Brahman and non-Brahman. In fact, even when you are talking about self-respect movement and Dravid movement or Dravidian movement in South India, you will realize that why they were protesting, because most of the higher post in judiciary or in, you know, IAS, IPS, they were like they were mainly Brahmanas, etc. I am a Brahman, so I keep on telling people, don't kill me. I keep on talking about Brahmanical supremacy, etc. So people keep on killing me in the comments. I am a Brahman. I'm just telling what other scholars are saying, because our and your view does not matter in history or any other exam. What scholar says, that matters. Fine. Vaikom Satyagraha, Periyar, wow Charita. Where are you from, Charita? Like which place? Many people believe that 7th century AD Islam has also emerged. So that is also posing a threat to Hinduism along with Buddhism and Jainism. So Bhakti movement was also a response against the rise of Islam. So there are multiple interpretations why Bhakti movement happened the way it happened. Okay, it's not thank you. We have to go to the first lecture, our first point now. Just give me a second. So now let's go and let's read some more things related to Bhakti. I know it has become very dense subject, but yes, this particular topic is dense. You cannot ignore it. You have to read it this way. So, Bhakti movement, we have seen the basic intricacies. What are the things which are important? For that, we have seen class 7, chapter 6 and not entry into temples, and class 12, chapter 6. Andhra Pradesh, very good, Charita. I was there in Hyderabad, but now it is in Telangana. Earlier, it was the capital of both Telangana and means, you know, Andhra Pradesh. What is the current capital of Andhra Pradesh? So, Bhakti movement. What is Bhakti movement? Here again, the Bol Bachchan is written, sought to bring religious reform of all strata of society by adopting a method of devotion to achieve salvation. That we want nirvana, we want to get out of this particular world. As Sunil Sethi sir is saying here, that he is not willing to take any more sins. He is like, मैं इस पाप का बोझ और नहीं बर्दाश्त कर सकता. What does that mean in English is, he is not like, he is too much fed up of all the sins which he has committed in his life, and that's why he has opened all the buttons of his shirt, because his body cannot tolerate all the pap and he want to give it a breather. Why are you wearing shirt when you cannot button all the, you know, all the buttons are open? Okay, it's Sunil Sethi sir's wish. Hope you are understanding what he is talking about salvation, that people need salvation, and the new way was the Bhakti way. Again, the things are written here. We have talked about it. Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Alvars and Nayanars, philosophical theories, Dvaita, Advaita Vedanta. These philosophies, Dvaita, Advaita, we have talked about it earlier also in the 8th lecture, which was on orthodox, like philosophy. We can also revise that particular lecture, you know. Bhakti movement, Bhagavad Gita, and here, this is important. We have already talked about what is Bhagavatism. So now here, pay attention. There are 3 margs which they talk about. I will tell you where you can get confused. So one is Bhakti marg, other is Karma marg, and third is Gyan marg. So these 3 marks Bhagavad Gita talks about. Don't confuse it with the Vedas. In Vedas, if you remember, we have talked about Gyan Kand and Karm Kand. Do you remember Vedas, Gyan Kand and Karm Kand? What do they cater to? Anybody? In Vedas, we have talked about Gyan Kand and Karm Kand. Karm Kand and Gyan Kand. Which part of Vedas were catering to Karm Kand and which part of Vedas were catering to Gyan Kand? Any answers? Yes, sir. No answers up until now. Which part of Vedas were catering to Karm Kand and Gyan Kand? So you had Samhita Brahmana and Aranyaka. Samhita Brahmana and Aranyaka were catering to Karm Kand, and your Upanishad was catering to Gyan Kand. Please revise those lectures. So they are not same. Here in Bhagavad Gita, if we are talking about Bhakti Marg, Karma Marg and Gyan Marg, they are not same as these two. They are different. Bhakti Marg is devotion. Karma Marg is do your work. Gyan Marg is attain knowledge. So they are not same. Please don't confuse them. They sound same, but they are different. Samhita Brahmana, Aranyaka, and cool. Fine. Let's move on. This image we have also seen either in class 7 chapter 6 or class 12 chapter 6, if I remember correctly, class 7 chapter 6 important. And as we will see, or you people have already seen the PYQs, the dates are also important. Shankar Dev is very important. You can give him 3 stars. Anything related to Shankar Dev is important. He is in news. You cannot forget him. Then you have Chaitanya Dev, Guru Nanak sir, already questions has been asked. Dadu Dayal will see about him or talk about him a lot now also. And then here, all these sir, Gyaneshwar, Namdev, Tukaram, Eknath, they are the ones who will be starting the Pandharpur movement or Vitthal movement, which will be later on covering, means converting into Varkari and Dharkari movements. Basavanna, Virashaiva or Lingayas. Again, Manikava Sagar, Ramanuja, we have talked about Manikava Sagar a lot in NCERT. He has been represented by images also, so he becomes important. Chaitanya Dev, Bengal, and then Kabir, etc. is there. Kabir is like not etc. But yes, Kabir is very important here. So again, started in South India, Alvars and Nayanars. We have talked about what is why they have emerged. You can have a look at it. Please remember the chronology in which we have studied Bhakti movement. First, class 7 chapter 6. Second, class 12 chapter 6. Third, these slides. And in these slides also, first you have to solve that question, why Bhakti movement emerged first in South, and then the other portion of the slides. That's how you have to go about this particular lecture. This is a tricky lecture and this is the chronology which you have to follow. Cool. Sir, so reason behind the movement, spread of Islam, emergence of great reformers, influence of Sufi sects, reaction against feudal oppression and Rajput Brahmin domination. We have talked about all these points. Just remember the points which we have discussed. Why it emerged in South India, what was the reason, like reaction against Buddhism and Jainism, reaction against bipolarized society, all these reasons. Plus, means, other points, political, economic turmoil because of which it will happen in South India. So all these things they have written here. Even when we'll talk about Sufism later on, you will realize that people believe that in current days also they go to Sufi dargahs. Doesn't matter which religion you belong to, you go to Sufi dargahs. But one thing which you cannot forget is Sufism is Islamic mysticism movement. That is, it is a Islamic movement, it is one of the Islamic sects. And one of the criticism of Sufism is that it led to large scale conversion of lower caste Hindus. So again, some people believe that it is also reaction against Islam, it is also reaction against Sufism, Bhakti movement. So these points you have to keep it in mind. Common teachings, equality, universal brotherhood, denounced evil practices, all these things. You can write these bol bachans, and this is self-explanatory. That everyone is equal. God is not only accessible to the so-called higher class, so-called Brahmins, and everyone is equal. And we should have, like there is a quote in Jainism which we have discussed, Parasparo Graho Jivanam. I know you people must have forgotten by now because you don't believe in revision, but you should. Parasparo Graho Jivanam. Motto of Jainism. If you know which particular Jaina text talks about it, write it in the comment section. Else, go back to Jainism lecture and revise this. So that is what Parasparo Graho Jivanam. We have to help each other. We have to promote universal brotherhood. Bhakti. Focus on Bhakti. Focus on combining yourself with God via songs, via japs, rather than rituals and sacrifices. So again, you can see a tinge of, Buddha and Jaina element in Bhakti form. Like in Buddhism, Jainism also talked or rejected rituals, Same thing you are seeing here. Similar kind of thing. Not exactly same. Local languages. It is said that when you are talking about Shankar Dev, you are talking about Chaitanya Dev, you are talking about Gyaneshwar Tukaram or Pandharpur movement, they will lead to development of Marathi language. Similarly here, you will see Brajavali in Assam. So different local or vernacular languages will emerge because of the efforts of these Bhakti saints. That's what this particular slide is saying. Again, this image is important. That's why it keeps on coming again and again. Nirgun and Shagun Bhakti, there are terms. Class 7, chapter 6, class 12, chapter 6 talks a lot about these terms. Nirgun, God without attributes. Shagun, God with attributes. Kabir, Guru Nanak, they were the major proponents of Nirguna Bhakti. Shaguna Bhakti, that is like Hinduism and Alvars, Nayanars. That is Shagun Bhakti, God with attributes. Fine. So that is what is written here. You can have a look at them. Social impact. Similar to that of Protestant Reformation of Christianity. See, later on, when you will clear prelims, we'll have mains crash course. So there we will talk about a question. Why did Industrial Revolution first happen in England? And there you will talk about, like in England, the major sect of Christianity which was there was the Protestant class, And in Protestant class, there is a theory of predestination. theory of predestination. So theory of predestination, what does it says? Like theory of predestination, it says that sometimes people work hard to become successful, because if you are successful, it means that God is, looking upon you and God loves you. So that's why Protestant people worked hard to show and to become successful, so that they can tell others that, see, God is with me, God loves me, that's why I have become successful. This is known as theory of predestination. So what they are trying to say, that just like, Christianity, different reforms happened, Protestant reform, Bhakti movement can also be seen as a reform within Hinduism. That what are the things which we are not doing correctly? Are we, paying too much attention to rituals and sacrifices? Have we lost faith in the concept of devotion? So we have to reform ourselves, and Bhakti movement is an attempt towards that reformation. This, Advaita philosophy, Dvaita philosophy, Vishishta Advaita philosophy, all these philosophies. Fine. Social cohesion, community fasting, langar, and all these things. I like langar a lot. All these things are awesome. So transformation of form of bhakti, devotional, again, you can have a look at it. Inclusivity, inclusive growth, growth of all sections of society. As our Honorable Prime Minister Sir says, sabka saath, sabka vikas, sabka prayas, and every other sabkas also. That means growth of all sections of society, leaving no one behind. And that's what Bhakti movement believed in. And that's what our Honorable PM Sir believes in. Great. Oh my God. These are all points which is but obvious, promoted unity. But again, please revise these terms. What was Dvaita? What was Vishishta Dvaita? What was Advaita? Class lecture 8, Orthodox philosophy. Samkhya Yoga, Nyaya Vaisheshika, Purvimamsa and Uttarvimamsa, which is also known as Vedanta school. And then there are other impacts like, Guru ka langar, dan, etc. So Math has adopted social functions, again, to promote universal brotherhood. Like this guy, he is going to langar because he loves free food. Have a look at these points. We are focusing on the important areas. We have already covered the most important area from 2 NCERT chapters. Now we are just trying to see what are the things which we have not covered. Alvars and Nayanars, we have talked about them. Nayans, eyes, that is Shiva has third eye. So Nayanars are Shiva or Shaivites and Alvars are Vaishnavites. Alvars 12, Nayanars 63, and out of those Alvars and Nayanars which are important, those are those who are mentioned multiple times in your 2 NCERT chapters like Upper, Manikava Sagar, all these guys you have to remember. Nalayira Divya Prabandham, question mark here because it is also known as Tamil Veda, but we have already seen that Tamil Veda is not exclusively, like Nalayira Divya Prabandham is not the only book which is called as Tamil Veda. Tirukullar and other texts are also known as Tamil Veda. So be very sure about it. Fine. Nalayira Divya Prabandham associated with Alvars, Tivaram associated with Nayanars. Tivaram, Nayanars. So these are the points which will keep on coming again and again. That means they are important. So Nayanars 63 and this sir here is Upper. Bharat Ek Khoj episode 21 related to Bhakti, and there you can see Upper, and Upper NCERT also talks a lot about him, so you have to remember him. You can forget Nana Champanthar, and again South Indian friends, if I'm pronouncing the name wrong, sorry, pardon me. And then Chuntara Murthy. Upper is very important, you cannot forget him. Tivaram is very important, you cannot forget him. If NCERT talks about something a lot, that becomes important from exam point of view. I love Seva, Langar and Dan. I love Langar. Then Vallabhacharya. Then there are certain Bhakti saints about whom you should know. Like dates 1479 to 1531. Now the question in front of you. Is he a contemporary of Akbar? Let's say if somebody asks, Vallabhacharya is a contemporary of Akbar. Is he a contemporary of Akbar? I will give you 10 seconds. Don't worry, you will remember Kritika. Don't worry about it. There are 2 chapters, you will look at it again and again. You will remember it. What was the question I asked? Akbar, no, he was not a contemporary because Akbar ruled from 1556 to 1605 and he died in 1531. Fine. God Krishna, Vaishnavite. I have already given you a cheat code. In North India, more often than not, you will see most of the Bhakti saints are Vaishnavites rather than Shaivites. This is a cheat code, keep it in mind. Fine. He founded Pushti Marg, part of grace. This is the part which you have to remember, and these are tricky areas. Vallabhacharya, they can ask you who is the founder of Pushti Marg or path of grace, devotee how to suffer, offer selfless love. Srinathji, again, here we are talking about Vishnu or form of Vishnu. So, what is important in this slide? Pushti Marg. Whether he was born to a Telugu Brahmin family or some other family is not important because there's still question mark on that. But who found Pushti Marg? That is important from exam perspective. Vallabhacharya, his disciple is Surdas. Why there is a question mark? Because again, there are issues related to dates. And some people believe that even Surdas was equal in age to Vallabhacharya or sometimes even older than him. So, there are issues related to it, whether he was a disciple or not. Most of the sources converge on the fact that doesn't matter whether he was older or younger than Vallabhacharya, he was the disciple. So, again, he, popularized the Krishna cult. The cheat code you are understanding. Vaishnavism, very, very popular in North India. Proponents of Bhakti movement in Maharashtra. Here, the Pandharpur or Vitthal movement we have already seen. Their sloks or verses are known as Abhangas. That is important. What is more important is vernacular language development, but Varkari and Dharkari sect. Later on, when you hear about Eknath, Tukaram, all these Gyandev. So, there are so many sects. But you have to remember they are associated with Vitthal and Pandharpur movement. And here there are two sects, Varkari and Dharkari. So, Varkari sect talks about going to Vitthal temple every year. You have to do that. Dharkari sect says that no, that is not needed, that is not must. You have to look within yourself. You will find Vitthal or Vishnu Bhagwan inside you and focus on your inner purity rather than external conduct that much. So, Dharkari sect focuses on inner purity more than annual pilgrimage which happens or which is supported by Varkari sect. So, Varkari and Dharkari. So, founders also, who were the founders of Varkari and Dharkari, there are confusion here. So, you can use a cheat code, that is Ram ka naam ek, Ram ka naam ek. So, that will help you in remembering the founder. So, Ram is Ramdas, who is supposed to be the founder of Dharkari sect, and Namdev and Eknath, they are both supposed to be the founder of Varkaris. There is a debate there. So, Ram ka naam ek will help you in eliminating other options. If such kind of tricky question do come in UPSC pre. Hope you are understanding what we are discussing here. Namdev we read in before videos. Very good here. So, Varkari and Dharkari sect, they can even give you, it is associated with Pandharpur movement or it is associated with Sankardev movement in Assam. So, you have to keep that in mind where we have read this. Gyaneshwar or Gyandev, and he is associated with, again, he wrote a commentary on Bhagavad Gita called Gyaneshwari. What question they can give you here? All the other things you can forget about, one thing they can give you that Gyaneshwari is a commentary on, and then they will give you different books that it is a commentary on, Sutta Pitaka or Bhagavad Gita or Ramayana. So, this is the point which you have to focus on. Rest all you can forget because there is a limit to how much you can remember. So, that is a commentary on Bhagavad Gita which will remind you of Cillian Murphy and his movie. What was the name of that movie? That guy was Oppenheimer, was greatly inspired by Bhagavad Gita. So, this will also help you in remembering Gyaneshwari, and you can associate it with Cillian Murphy, Bhagavad Gita. Then Namdev, Eknath, Tukaram, Varkari, Dharkari. So, just you can forget all these things, bro. Just remember that he was a tailor. He was from, lower echelon of society. That is the part you have to remember. You can forget other parts. Sant Eknath, Marathi poet saint, scholar of Varkari Sampradaya. Varkari and Dharkari, what is the difference between them? That's it. No need of doing PhD here. The non-sectarian sense. This is the word which is very important here. When you are talking about Vitthal or Pandharpur movement, when you are talking about Mirabai rather, when you are talking about Alvars and Nayanars, these are all sectarian sense. Sectarian means they are promoting a particular religion. Non-sectarian means they are promoting a formless God. You are not knowing the religion of that particular God. Be it Guru means Kabir or Guru Nanak Dev. It is a different matter altogether that later on Guru Nanak Dev teachings got compiled or Sikhism happened. We have just discussed what NCERT was saying about this. So, they are talking about a formless God, a Nirgun God, and that's why they are part of something known as non-sectarian sense. So again, the teachings are there. We have talked about all these things, Kabir and Guru Nanak, how they talk about Nirgun Bhakti, how Kabir has condemned both Hinduism as well as Islam, and what NCRT talks about it or says about it. So Kabir, his teachings are there in, one of the most famous disciples of Ramananda. Adi Granth, Guru Granth, we have talked about all these things. He was born like in a Hindu family, it is believed, but brought by Muslim weavers, and he condemned both of them. Fine. I'm not reading all these things, bro, because we have already talked about it in those 2 chapters. Followers are known as Kabir Panthis. His compositions are compiled in Bijak. Please remember these words. Like what is Bijak? How it is different from Adi Granth? How Adi Granth is different from Guru Granth? All these points we have discussed. Adi Granth, first 5 Sikh Gurus teaching. Guru Granth, all 10 Gurus teachings. It is also known as 11th Guru. Bijak, teachings of Kabir. That's it. Guru Nanak Ji. Talwandi and Unity of God, Nirguna Bhakti, we have talked about it. Have a look at it. You can just do the revision. You know the process now. You know the sequence now. Class 7 chapter 6 first, class 12 chapter 6 second, third is your slide. That's how you will remember. Langar, Pangat, Sangat, you have to remember the difference between them. What is Langar? What is Pangat? What is Sangat? So Langar, collective cooking and sharing of food. Pangat, partaking food. Again, you can look at it. And as this sir is saying, this is what Langar Pangat Sangat is, when all of you are eating Maggie together. Very good. Ramananda. What is important here when we are talking about Ramananda? Follower of Ramanuja, again here you can see the basic tenets related to Vaishnavism, and he put emphasis on Bhakti, avoided both Gyan Marg and Karma Marg, founded the Ram cult. Why I'm showing you these names? You won't remember half of it, and I know it, and I have no issues with it. The only thing is you shouldn't be remembering, like forgetting rather, major portion of class 7 chapter 6, class 12 chapter 6. I'm just trying to prove the point which I told you earlier, that Vaishnavism cult is very, 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 very popular in North India compared to Shaivism cult when it comes to Bhakti scent, and this is the point which you have to keep in mind. Other point you can forget. Dadu Dayal, he is important. If UPSC asks a question on anybody, he becomes important. So Dadu Dayal, he comes a little bit later than Guru Nanak Ji. So Guru Nanak Ji's time period was 1469 to 1539. After that, Dadu Dayal comes 1544 to 1603. So now if I ask you, Dadu Dayal is a contemporary of Akbar, what will be your answer? Yes or no? Is Dadu Dayal a contemporary of Akbar? Yes. Sir, how toppers will remember? Toppers? Which toppers, bro? You don't have to remember anything. Just remember those things which I have told you to remember. So he is a contemporary of Akbar. This point you have to remember. See, dates of most of the Bhakti saints are not very clearly defined. But there are some Bhakti saints, like even Guru Nanak sir, whose dates are clearly defined. Dadu Dayal included. UPSC is asked on Dadu Dayal, so you have to keep that in mind. So 1544, yes, he is a contemporary of Akbar. And he is also a disciple of, Kabir. I wanted to say Kabir sir, but yes, hope you understood this. Worked as a cotton cleaner, and his teachings, he does not talks about going to temples, etc. He focuses on the concept called jap, do the jap, and the place where followers of Dadu Dayal will meet is known as Thamba. Thamba. Like you talk about Simba, who is Ranveer Singh. So you can associate Simba with Thamba, and that's how you can remember the place where followers of Dadu Dayal meet, that is known as Thamba. So let me show you something. He rejected the Vedas, caste division, other divisive external forms of worship. He is important. That's why we are talking about him. He focused on jap, the chanting of God's name, which our father or grandfather do a lot. So his followers came to be known as Dadu Panthis, who set up ashrams known as Thambas. So how will you remember Thambas? Via this guy called Simba. Simba, Thamba, Dadu Dayal. Remember this, and that would be it. Fine. Vegetarianism, he promotes it, and you can forget everything. And even in this Dadu Pan, like, his japs and wherever his teachings are there, so you will see that he has included the teachings of Kabir in the books which are written on Dadu Dayal as well, because he was heavily influenced by, or he was a disciple of Kabir. So that is the point which you also have to keep in mind. Fine. Bhakti movement limitations. Did this, subordination of women concept ended by this? No. Do we see any major change in our societies or societal structure? No. So you can see everything which was before Bhakti movement stayed more or less same after Bhakti movement. It's not like a radical change. Casteism was there even before Bhakti movement. It remained even after it. So that's what they are saying. Lack of organization, stern opposition from orthodox class, ambivalent approach of royal classes, women lower caste issues still persist. So these were the limitations. It impacted certain areas. If you talk about Shankardev, Assam, certain areas were impacted. If you talk about Mirabai, certain areas were affected. If you talk about Guru, Kabir or Dadu Dayal, certain areas. But more or less, has society changed in a radical manner? No. That is also one of the limitations of Bhakti movement which you have to keep in mind. So now let's solve some PYQs. This is a question related to Bhakti saints. Consider the following Bhakti saints: Dadu Dayal, Guru Nanak and Tyagaraj. Who among the above was were preaching when the Lodi dynasty fell and Babur took over? Dadu Dayal, Guru Nanak, Tyagaraj. Who among the above was were preaching when the Lodi dynasty fell and Babur took over? Sundaram has given the answer. We have already seen that when Babur took over, Dadu Dayal was not even born. Dadu Dayal was born in 1544. Babur took over in 1526, right? Dadu Dayal, birth here is 1544. So one cannot be the answer. So eliminate 1 A and D. You are left with B and C. You don't even need to check for second. Tyagaraj happened much late in 17th, 18th century AD. So he's not a contemporary of any of them. So Tyagaraj you can eliminate. I know you don't know about Tyagaraj, but now you will know about Tyagaraj. So any questions? See, understand one thing. The ambit from where UPSC can ask questions is a lot. So what happens when you solve questions like 20, 30, 40 years old? So you get an idea that these are the areas UPSC will ask question in future. If I'm making mistakes in those areas, then I'm doing a sin. I'm a papi, 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 papi. There is a song called Chulo, something, something. So don't be a papi, don't do sin, don't, make mistakes in those questions which UPSC has already asked. So if they ask you questions on Dadu Dayal, Guru Nanak or Tyagaraj, you will or you should not make any mistakes. So again, you can read about Guru Nanak Dev. Tyagaraj is important. 18th to 19th century, in fact, not even 17th and 18th. And he is a composer, renowned composer of Carnatic music. About him, we will talk when we are talking about music and dance and all those things. So he came much later than Dadu Dayal or Guru Nanak or Babur. So that is the point which you have to keep it in mind. Again, a question which you may not have heard about, but let's try to solve it. That will give you a new perspective here. So, Prem Vatika, poems on the life of Krishna were composed by A. Bihari, B. Surdas, C. Ras Khan or D. Kabir. Dark has given the answer. The answer is C. Ras Khan. So, he is a Muslim, but he is a, follower of Krishna or devotee of Krishna. So, that's what used to happen in earlier times. The answer is Ras Khan. And again, don't worry about it. Now, if question comes on this Prem Vatika or Ras Khan, you will not do mistake here. So, he was a Hindi poet who was both a Muslim and follower of Lord Krishna. We need more such example in today's time to promote religious harmony. And he has written this. Prem Ayani Shri Radhika Prem Varan. Again, I don't know what he means by this particular, Avdi or whatever dialect this is, but he is a devotee of Krishna. He was a Muslim. And that is awesome. Ras Khan ke dohe. Raskhan, devotee of Krishna. That is the point which you have to keep in mind. And this is the question on which we have brainstormed earlier. So do revise this particular question. And that would be it for today's lecture. If you have any particular doubt, if you have any particular queries, you can ask it now. And this is a homework for you people. We'll meet on Monday. So class 7, chapter 6, class 12, chapter 6, have a look at it. Even look at the Sufism elements which is there. We'll talk about Sufism in detail in the next lecture. And if you know already some things beforehand of those 2 chapters, that will help you a lot in expediting the things. Today we have not even done 10 questions because we had a lot of things to study. So in the next lecture we will supplement it, we will solve some more questions. Any doubt, any queries, sir and ma'am? Revise everything, otherwise materials will pile up on you. You already have studied a lot and revision is very much needed. So any section, any lecture which you feel like you have not studied, do revise it. So thank you everyone. Then I will